Dance movement is powerful. Ali Golding, choreographer of 30 years, was expected to deliver this talk, but I've taken her place. My name is Miley. Nation. And I'm a dance scientist. Every scientist needs a lab assistant, and he's mine. Yes, I do have a skeleton in my closet. And his name is Mark. Question, because he's got the answers. Except, as you can see, his body's been a bit neglected, similar to the way it is in our current education system. So I'm going to be calling on your help today to discover why dance movement works for learning. Together, we'll improvise our way through the introduction, dance up a storm of a discussion, and come to a choreographed conclusion. So let's begin with a bit of physiology, the study of body systems. I invite you to stand up, please, and move with me, because we know that when we do things like this, feel free to improvise. I want you to experience what the moving is like, and this, please. And if you're feeling especially energetic, you could try something like this. Excellent, thank you very much for joining in. With enough intensity and frequency, we become healthier individuals. Science informs us that through a number of complex physiological processes, aerobic activity improves brain function, both in the short and in the long term. It may surprise you that when physical activity is increased in the school curriculum, academic attainment improves. So just by getting you up and moving, I can harness your attention and improve your memory. My friend, Mark here, is a moving miracle of biomechanics, the study of body physics. His bare bones must interact with the forces of gravity, along with some essential feedback systems that literally help us all make sense of the world. We all take this knowledge for granted, but we have to move to know it. Dancers spin, balance, work in close harmony with a partner. With such astonishing skill, it can sometimes defy human capability. Elite dancers can perform these feats with their eyes virtually closed in a darkened auditorium or a blindingly bright lighting state. Time for a practical experiment. I call this the ET. I invite you to stand up, please. And I'd like you to turn around, place your left foot directly in front of your right, heel to toe, and cross your arms over your chest. No, the other way. And then close your eyes. Now, you may be finding this difficult, in which case open your eyes momentarily and hold up your index fingers like this. And I'd like you to touch home with the neighbour. You can say hello at the same time. Hello. Hello. Keep your fingertips together and close your eyes again. Now you may be finding this easier. Thank you very much for joining in. You may take a seat. And it's not because your index fingers were holding up your entire body weight, but simply that your brain was grateful for the extra feedback. One of the reasons why ballet dancers train at the bar. Not only do we store these essential experiences in our brain, but they actually help to build it, because the brain is neuroplastic, which means it shapes and changes in response to new situations. Dance is arguably one of the most complex movement systems we ever learn. And there are several areas in the brain responsible for movement, not just one. So if you have dance experience, your brain connections will be different. Excited to explore my passion for neuroscience as an underpinning for my master's thesis, I approached the course director and said, I'd like to create a program using dance scientifically to help children learn. And she said, you can't do that because there's no module for it and there's no research. Ooh. I thought the point of research was to notice the gaps and address the need. And there clearly is a need. We have a childhood obesity epidemic in the Western world. As well as looking to diet, our children simply aren't moving enough. And that is just the visible tip of a much bigger iceberg. In modern, urban, 21st century living, we might need to change our perception of what a disadvantaged child might look like. I bet you could all write with your eyes closed because you've had lots of practice. But could you still do it if you'd mainly used an iPad? Research findings are alarming. An increasing number of children are arriving at school without the necessary background of movement experiences to enable them to be efficient learners and to access the curriculum. Currently, that figure is estimated to be, actually, I'm not going to tell you. Instead, we're going to dance the answer. So Mark's question is, what's the percentage of children arriving at school without the necessary background of movement experiences? If you think the answer is 40% or under, I'd like you to do this, please. And you can do this standing or sitting in your seats as you like. If you think the answer is 40 to 70%, I'd like you to do this, please. And if you think the answer is 70% or above, I'd like you to do this, please. Are you ready? Dance your answer. So just to remind you, what's the percentage of children arriving at school affected by this issue? 40% or under, 40 to 70%, 70% or above. And I'd like you to keep dancing, please, because while you are, everybody is engaged in the learning, plus the dance movement is anchoring your thoughts. Also, I can easily see who can follow the instructions and how you're dancing. So that wasn't it. That's really useful information for a teacher. Okay, we're done. Time for the answers. If you were doing the Shorty George, you look hip, but the answer's too low. If you were doing the crisscross hand jive, you'd be right, about a decade ago. So that leaves the high guys, and the answer is frighteningly high. In fact, it's much higher than 70%. A current research study indicates that figure is 90%. 90% of children are arriving at school not able to reach their full potential. And teachers are noticing these difficulties in the classroom. Well, you would, wouldn't you? So I went ahead and I did the study. And my supervisor was completely right. There was no dance-specific research. So I had to be creative. And in reaching out, I found myself supported by leading pioneers in the fields of educational theory and physical activity research. Mike Kuxala, advocate of a kinesthetic classroom, has become a friend since that time. Borrowing from him, teaching through movement is only limited by your imagination. So I brought all this together with Ali Golding's 30 years experience as a choreographer and developed a program, which I called Developmental Dance Movement. And I took it into 2 primary schools, initially as a pilot for a term. I used a validated measurement tool, an easy to administer drawing exercise to gather the data. And after just 9 weeks, the results came back, statistically significant. The class average in developmental maturity increased by 7%, with children with special educational needs, and that's about 20% of every mainstream classroom, by the way, benefiting even more. I now have hundreds of these drawings, and as well as the actual score, each pre and post pair tell their own story, because as a child's embodied understanding and knowledge of themselves improves, so does their ability to represent it, drawing what they know, no matter what the baseline. Put simply, a child with an age-appropriate score still improves. What I particularly like about this example, if you look closely, is how this young person's listening skills have apparently doubled, and their perception and headspace have grown so much that they're off the page. And this example goes from an unrecognisable figure to a bold human representation. I regularly present at conferences, and just recently, Baroness Hollins said something that I think really resonates with this work. When we get it right for those with learning difficulties, we get it right for everybody. Because this learning strategy is beneficial for all children. I'd like to share a narrative with you. Kayana, a child with profound autism and additional needs, had one-to-one support and was hardly ever seen to integrate with the rest of the class. Her teacher said, "She's not like that in class. She's not part of the group. She tends to do her own thing. And she's not as focused as she was in those movement sessions." This is a genuine model of inclusion, where, borrowing from Tori Dunlap, special doesn't have to be a euphemism for separate, because everybody can dance. And we need an inclusive classroom if we're going to have an inclusive society. The work is continuing to have a significant impact on children who are on the autistic spectrum. Greenwich University are leading on a new study. My US colleague, Joanne Lara, world-renowned autism expert, says it best. It takes 2 sides of the brain to dance. We know that the 2 hemispheres have different functions. Autism is a neurological brain difference. There are particular deficits, especially in the areas of speech and language and social interaction. And the 2 hemispheres don't communicate terribly effectively. Dance can help sort that out. But I don't just want you to take my word for it. And this time, it's your turn to do the choreography. So I invite you to stand up one more time. We're going to dance in the style of Robert Cohan's waterless method of swimming instruction. So I'd like you to pick a swimming stroke, please, perhaps your favourite, and perform it dry side. Off you go. You don't need to copy me, you can choose your own. Fabulous. Excellent. Okay, and now choose another, maybe one you don't do so often, and perform that, please. Excellent. It's all about social interaction if you connect with someone. Okay, all right, now for a bit of synchronized swimming. I'd like you to perform both strokes simultaneously, one with your right and one with your left. Off you go, and alternate sides as you do it. Giggles from the audience. You're doing great. Really good for non-swimmers, this. Okay. And thank you very much. You may take a seat. Did you have to think about that? Because the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. And when we do particular patterns and sequences with rehearsed repetition, hang on a minute, patterns, sequences, rehearsed repetition, that sounds like dancing to me. We get amazing results. And it's not so far-fetched because physiotherapists use similar methods to rehabilitate people who suffered a stroke. But this is a learning tool, and it's creative and fun and engaging and motivating and a little bit theatrical. Movement works because movement wires. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And there's a name for that process by which neural networks shape themselves, build, and strengthen. Do you want to know what it is? It's called myelation. And that's me. I'd like to finish with a little story. Sir Ken Robinson, international educator, in his wonderful TED talk about creativity in schools, mentions a little girl who was finding school very difficult. Instead of being given medication for ADHD, she was given the chance to dance. She went on to become Gillian Lynn, world famous choreographer. I have a similar story about a little boy who was finding school very difficult. He was given the chance to dance in the pilot program. He's probably never going to become a world famous choreographer or even a dancer, but his life was changed positively. We know that the neural connectivity in ADHD and autism look quite similar. His teacher described him. He was agitated. He couldn't sit still for more than 30 seconds, probably. I can't completely correlate the change in him with the MovementWorks sessions, but he's been in reception a whole year. And it's only now, in the past few weeks, that he's been able to sit and use a pencil and do some nice activities. I'm delighted to be standing here talking to you about the importance of movement and dance because it raises awareness. But what really makes the difference is in the doing. It's likely in the future we're going to need a very different kind of knowledge and curriculum in an education system that inevitably is going to continue to embrace advances in technology. But if we're going to continue to embrace advances in neuroscience, we're going to also need many more concrete flesh and bone experiences from inspiring and creative educators that really understand the true power of the body as a source of knowledge. I think we should listen to Sir Ken when he talks about the importance of creativity and valuing dance for its own sake. But when we start to understand the science of dance and really know how to apply it with intention, we could start to imagine that dance could have a transformative effect on our education system. You've just experienced a few fleeting moments of an embodied learning approach. Imagine now if you were led to learn through a sustained sequence of dances, carefully crafted to embrace the gaps in your movement experience. And as well as physical mastery, you would improve your neural connectivity and your conceptual understanding and your speech and language communication and social interaction skills. Imagine how much you'd grow across a whole year. that is developmental dance movement. I've been Miley because the art-science interface is fun and creative, just as I think our children's learning experiences can and should be. Together, Mark and I have asked for your full embodied involvement, to draw on your senses, to spark a new thought, to anchor it, to harness your attention, to connect with yourself, the environment, and with others, and to create new pathways of understanding. That's why movement works for learning. Thanks for dancing with me.